In your experience, what are the common signs or symptoms of dysregulated circadian rhythm?
Oh gosh, like everything that we complain about. Poor energy, fatigue, trouble sleeping,
Brain fog,
not able to recover, not able to change body composition in the way that you want to. Yeah, brain fog, I would say like any brain function, metabolic health. So the way that our glucose and insulin function. I would say like almost every reason that people come to us and complain. It's like, well, if you aligned your circadian rhythm, what it does is it creates synchronicity in the body, and synchronicity creates safety. Now, ultimately, our nervous systems just want to feel safe. And so we have consistency. A lot of those troubles of the body going, I have to stay hypervigilant. I'm not quite sure what time of day it is, what time you're going to feed me, what time you're going to let me sleep. It creates a vigilance. And then the body can't do what it naturally wants to do or wants to optimally do. So I would say like the downstream effects are just never ending.
Renee, Lauren, welcome to the Charlotte and Giselle Show. I am so happy to have you here with me today.
Thank you. We're
Thanks
honored
for having us
to be here.
I have to say, it is the first time that I have two sisters at the same time on my show.
Oh, well,
Yay!
Honored to be here first.
I'm so excited. Renee, Lauren, could you start off by giving us a little bit of a tour of all your health background, your love for biohacking, and maybe a bit of a journey so that our folks know a bit more about you?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Well, our journey started as children since we're sisters. And sorry, I always butt in because I'm the older sister. So this typically how we do it.
I let her take the mic.
Our father, we call him the OG biohacker. We give him credit because he had a very curious mindset. And so we learned very early on to be curious about our own health and to kind of expand our reach in areas that we would look at and when we needed to solve a problem. He had all kinds of like really cool biohacking devices around our house. So we were not only exposed to the technology, but we really were exposed to the mindset around solving health challenges and being really creative, I think, with our health. And I'll let Renee take it from there.
Yeah, I think that, like she said, that kind of set the stage, the foundation. We both went off to college. We're 2 years apart. Lauren's 2 years older. She went to New York. I went to Florida. I actually went to study business, but as soon as I graduated, I completely like crashed. I was sleeping 13 hours a night, just so tired all the time, brain fog. And it was just this accumulation of not taking care of my body through college, working a full-time job, being a full-time student, trying to be the most productive person on the planet. And I graduated and I just like couldn't get out of bed. So that was my first wake-up call to how important it is to take care of our bodies. And I went to traditional medicine at the time and they ran some labs and they said, your labs look great. We don't know why you're tired. Just keep sleeping. Sleep more. I'm like, it's not the answer I was looking for. So I started exploring. I went to our mom and dad who've been in the holistic health space for now over 40 years. And I started asking chiropractors, massage therapists, acupuncturists, herbalists, naturopaths. I was asking every holistic health practitioner, trying to put the puzzle pieces together of what is going on with my health. Why am I so tired? And it ended up being multiple things, not just the stressed out type A person that I was. That definitely played a huge role, but I had mercury toxicity. I had Epstein-Barr virus. Circadian rhythm was just way, way off. Lots of things. And so that is really what catapulted me into becoming a biohacker, because the huge lesson was everyone is different. So what worked for me is not going to necessarily work for the next person. And I had to really take responsibility for my health and figure out what was going on, because I didn't find one practitioner that could figure everything out. And so it really empowered me to say like, hey, there's more options out there than alternative medicine is, or than traditional medicine is giving us. And so I went back, got my master's in nutrition, became a nutrition and health coach. And then 5 years ago, Lauren and I'm in Vegas now. She's in New York City. We said, man, we're sisters. We're in the same industry. We should do something together. And it was right before the pandemic hit. We said, let's start a podcast. We can do that anywhere in the world. And then the Biohacker Babes podcast was born from there.
Yeah.
It's my long story of it.
Yeah. It's our favorite
Love
thing
the
to do
story.
is to talk about health. And I mean, we had quite different journeys, but we came back to the same place of like, we really love this journey, the kind of health detective space of getting to know root causes and putting together the puzzle pieces. I had a bout of burnout living in New York City because no one ever told me like you could do too much exercise and not rest enough, which is ludicrous when you think about it now. Everyone's talking about that. But at the time, I was like, 150% or bust. There was nothing else. And so same thing through my burnout, I had to do my own education and my own empowerment to put the pieces together. So it's a huge passion of ours. And we love to not only educate our clients, but just like talk about this stuff. So we're happy to be here today.
Oh, good. And Lauren, I'm curious when you said burnout from over exercising, were you coming at it from a athletic background? Were you training for specific purposes? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. So I moved to New York City to be a professional dancer. Renee and I grew up dancing. And then I decided I wanted to go into that career. So I went to school for dance. And then I started dancing with dance companies out of college and then ended up performing on Broadway. And to support my dance career, which was, rehearsals, classes, auditions all day long, I was also working as a personal trainer as a way to support my body. But it was just more and more and more. So it was through my own training and kind of learning the physical training space, but also not really sleeping a ton and just so much wear and tear. Again, there just wasn't a lot of talk about the recovery end. It was like, if you show up, you're good, right? Like bonus points for showing up all the time, no matter what. And so, yeah, it was athletic training, dance training, and just too much of everything, really.
And I think the truth here is that it doesn't really matter whether it's performance on Broadway or it's trading on Wall Street. If you do too much of everything, you're going to burn out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
And we very much had that mentality of sleep. I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'm so glad that the discussion around sleep has completely changed now. But back then it was like, 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I'm good. Let's go. It's like, oh my gosh.
And
crazy.
The sleep was good because it was so reduced. It's like the number of hours I spent in bed was so short. Like I was sleeping when I was in bed. Now it's interesting because I have such a more consistent circadian rhythm and sleep routine. There's some time, I have to be really, really good about it because I'm not burnt out now. So I actually have to make sure that I do enough activity to get into that really a sweet spot zone. And that's part of the health detective work is like, what's your sweet spot? What is the balance for you? It's so different for everyone.
And I've heard you both now mention circadian rhythm, and I wonder if we could start there, because in my experience, when I work with folks across various industries, typically the corporate arena, whether you're working in a bank, whether you're working in a firm, you're spending 12 to 14 hours indoors exposed to blue light. You go straight from your bed onto your laptop when you're working from home or into the office. You spend minimum amount of time outside, and then at night to relax, you expose yourself to blue light. So tell us a little bit more about your understanding of the importance of circadian rhythm and how and why we got to a situation where our circadian rhythm are so dysregulated.
Oh, it's a big topic. I just want to say first, like blue light's not bad, but it's our relationship to the blue light that we really need to talk about. And I think overall, our bodies just want consistency. I'll just throw that out there because I know Renee is really excellent at leading this topic.
Yes, so glad you mentioned that because there is confusion around that, right? Blue light is not the enemy. It's the artificial blue light at night that can keep you
the timing
a little bit wired. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I will just start with, this is a great topic this week because here in the United States, we're dealing with daylight saving time. We just sprung forward on Sunday, so we lost an hour. And so for anyone that doesn't think that circadian rhythm impacts them, I would ask them, how do you feel the Monday morning after we lose an hour on Sunday? We see a rise in heart attacks, car accidents. A lot of health issues happen that Monday just by losing 1 hour over the weekend. So 1 hour, if it can make that big of a difference, I'm telling you, circadian rhythm really matters. So I'll just start with that. But with the light issue, so blue light we get from the sun. The sun is amazing for that. But we want to get a lot of blue light in the morning and midday, like you were just saying, not at night. So at night, we want more of that amber, red, orange hues, candlelight, dimming the electronics or getting off the electronics, but really like following our even indoor light exposure to what's happening outside. And of course, the more you can get outside, the more natural it's going to be, the less you need to biohack your lighting. But like you said, most of us are indoors for our jobs. Some people can't get outside as much, but the more we can follow the sun, the better.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start with that.
And there's so many scientific ways to advance your clock, your circadian clock. You can either push it forward or push it back. And this really helps with when you're jet lagged, traveling time zones, or with the clock changes. And hopefully we have a friend, Molly Eastman, that's really trying to fight to get rid of the daylight time because it's disruptive to our body. Even if you're not at risk of one of these like larger conditions or risks that Renee mentioned, most people on that Monday after spring forward are like, man, just didn't quite feel like myself today. Just like not totally on point. But so there's all these ways we can shift the clock, and there's specific times of day that we could take advantage of. But I would say like the basic thing was we just need to be getting outside more often than most of us are. And then there's key times for vitamin D, which is different than the circadian timing of the day, which we could totally go into. But I just say, like, for anyone listening, just see if you can increase your time outside, just like a little bit more every single day. Take tiny little breaks and go outside. That's it.
I would love for you to talk to us about vitamin D, because when I see results from my client, I like to get them tested on their vitamin D. And at the risk of sounding hyperbolic, I would say 90% of my clients are initially deficient in vitamin D when we start the coaching program.
Yeah, it is quite common.
Yeah, it's very common.
For so many reasons. I mean, there's a lot of genetic predispositions that allow people to not have that optimal metabolic pathway to synthesize it. But again, we're not outside enough. And also our food supply has been really altered. So it's great to test, of course. Like we can definitely take in too much vitamin D, especially from supplementation, much harder to do with food. But when it comes to supplementation, we really want to test and make sure, like, again, what is that sweet spot for you? We also want to make sure that we're not looking at a body that's super inflamed, because vitamin D elevates in the presence of inflammation. It's an acute phase reactant. So I apologize. I said that wrong. It goes down in the presence of inflammation. So we want to make sure it's not going down because of the inflammation and just jumping to the supplementation. We really want to like zoom out and understand the whole picture and story before just saying, you have to take 5,000 IU or you have to take 10,000 IU. Like, let's understand what the body is trying to tell us. But I agree. It's so common. So many clients come to me with suboptimal vitamin D levels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's helpful to also look at where you live. Mm-hmm. So I live in Las Vegas. I'm below the 37th parallel. So I can get vitamin D pretty much year round. It's obviously a little bit harder in the winter. The window of time I can get vitamin D is smaller in the winter than the summer, obviously. But I use an app called D Timer. I highly recommend everyone get that. And you can really see right where you are based on the current weather, how much vitamin D you might be able to get in that day. So obviously winter takes longer, but Lauren being in New York and Maryland above the 37th parallel, you're not getting any vitamin D in the winter. So there's also this idea of maybe we need to load up on that in the summer. That's what our ancestors probably did. They weren't taking vitamin D supplements. They were still living in northern climates, but they were getting a lot of that exposure in the summer, and that was potentially carrying them through the winter. Mm-hmm. But again, we're not getting outside enough, so most people aren't getting it from the sun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in your experience, what are the common signs or symptoms of dysregulated circadian rhythm?
Oh gosh, like everything that we complain about. Poor energy, fatigue, trouble sleeping,
brain fog,
not able to recover, not able to change body composition in the way that you want to. Yeah, brain fog, I would say like any brain function. Metabolic health, so the way that our glucose and insulin function. I would say like almost every reason that people come to us and complain. It's like, well, if you aligned your circadian rhythm, what it does is it creates synchronicity in the body, and synchronicity creates safety. Now, ultimately, our nervous systems just want to feel safe. And so we have consistency. A lot of those troubles of the body going, I have to stay hypervigilant. I'm not quite sure what time of day it is, what time you're going to feed me, what time you're going to let me sleep. creates a vigilance, and then the body can't do what it naturally wants to do or wants to optimally do. So I would say like the downstream effects are just never ending.
And have you found some simple, practical tools for folks listening that do have those heavy workload and are working those long hours and are listening and thinking, yes, I tick that box, brain fogs, low energy. Yes, yes, yes. What do I do next?
I would say be more consistent.
Yeah, be more consistent. I would say some biohacks. The number one thing I think is to try and wake up at the same time and get that sunlight exposure within 30 minutes of waking. So go outside, no sunglasses. If you can go for a walk, if you can put your feet on the earth and do some grounding, maybe some meditation or breath work, but get outside, tell your eyes, hey, look at the sun. Not literally, like don't stare at the sun for too long, but just get the light in your eyes. And if you are up before the sun and you say, hey, I can't do that, I really like this biohack called the human charger. It looks like just like a little set of headphones. You just put these little earbuds in and it shines bright light into your ears for 12 minutes. And it sends the same signal to your brain. Hey, it's morning. Let's increase cortisol. Let's get our brain going for the day. That's a great biohack. The other one is an SAD light, SAD light. Great opportunity to get some light in your eyes if you're up before the sun. So those are really good biohacks. And then on the other end of the spectrum is trying to go to bed at the same time, right? Lauren said consistency, anchor that bedtime, because then your body will know, oh, I'm always going to bed at 10. Okay. Melatonin starts to be produced. We start to get a little bit sleepy. The body knows what's coming. We're not just surprising it with this random bedtime. But then also watching that night light exposure like we were talking about. I say no electronics about 60 minutes before bed. I feel like that's a pretty reasonable thing. And then also wearing like a pair of blue light blocking glasses. I think that this is like, these are my daytime ones, but more yellow. This is one of the easiest biohacks. Everyone should own a pair of glasses because once you have them, as long as they're good quality, they're not going to break on you, right? You have them, you put them on. Maybe it makes the movie you're watching a slightly different color, but hey, you can still enjoy your Netflix at nighttime. And
you look really cool. I'm like, oh, she was wearing blue. I thought she was wearing something totally different.
When I watch the movies again, when I'm not watching them at night and I see them in daytime without my glasses, I'm like, oh,
it's a little different.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm like, I thought that was such a dark movie. Wow, it's actually really bright. Yeah. But such an easy biohack. Yeah.
Yes. I'm a big fan as well. When I have those late night con call, which, sometimes you have to do what you have to do. I put those on. It just makes a few people giggle, but that's the way I do it.
Yeah. I think we're going to see them more and more.
I think we have to normalize them. I was just watching the Oscars the other night, and there were random actors in the audience wearing colored glasses. I don't know if they were doing it for the purpose of blocking blue light, but I'm like, it's fashionable. Why don't we just make it fashion? Just normalize wearing them. I always have mine when I go to the airport. I wear them on the planes. I wear them especially if I'm flying in late and arrive late. I don't want to step off the airplane into a brightly lit airport. So that becomes like a pretty crucial time. But we're seeing them more and more. So just wear them proudly. It's cool.
Yes.
Yeah. It is
I think
cool.
it's a game changer for travels as well. I was very prone to headaches, very acute headaches when I was traveling. And I had never put two and two together until I started to use the glasses and realized we're surrounded with so much bright light in airport and the plane and that environment. It's completely artificial. And then when I put those glasses on, I travel and I don't have those headaches at all.
Oh, it's so great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I would also add in, sometimes you want to use actually a melatonin supplement. So melatonin supplementation, I think a lot of people think of it as a sleep supplement. It's been marketed as that. You can get it at your local drugstore, but I actually think of it as a circadian rhythm supplement. So it's not something you want to be taking every night. I think it's better for short-term use, during daylight saving time, during jet lag, when you're traveling across time zones. But by kind of artificially inducing that melatonin, it's signaling to the brain, hey, this is the time zone we want to be on. And it can just kind of push you a little bit forwards or backwards, depending on which way you're going.
Absolutely.
Another
And
hack.
I was wondering, because I know that you are both expert on the topic of metabolic health, what is the connection between optimal or suboptimal circadian rhythm and optimal or suboptimal metabolic health?
So I would say probably the biggest correlation is your sleep quality. If your circadian rhythm is not aligned, you're most likely seeing some kind of disruption in sleep. And sleep is when we rest and recover and rejuvenate. So when all of our organs go under repair, the brain detoxes, the body detoxes, our hormones all go through their own repair system. And so what we see with poor sleep usually is a breakdown in our glucose metabolism. And so that's sort of the popular thing now, is testing your glucose. Is popular for a good reason, because we can prevent these chronic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular health, if we can really get control of our metabolic health. But I find it's not always food driven. It's more circadian. If we go back, if we keep zooming out, it's circadian rhythm driven, which is going to affect your sleep. And if you're not getting optimal sleep, you're going to start to see a breakdown in metabolic health.
And it's a vicious circle, right? Because typically, if you're feeling really tired in the morning, then you're more likely to consume food that is actually going to put you deeper into the vicious cycle loop, because you're going to overconsume sugar, and then you're going to go on the roller coasters of all those glucose highs and lows. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many mechanisms behind that. Like our leptin and ghrelin, our hunger and satiety hormones, sort of get flipped. And so if you get poor sleep, then it's more likely you're going to have these cravings because your glucose metabolism is altered. And if we are falsely course correcting, like our body has this innate course correction system, but we as humans think like, oh, I can interfere, or we really don't have control over it. Because if you have cravings and you're tired, like we're just kind of wired to grab sugar and stimulants to make ourselves feel better. But if we can abstain from grabbing those quick kind of solutions, our body is going to naturally make its way back to homeostasis. So I'm always trying to help my clients to like not meddle with their health. Like don't do too much interference. Like let the body naturally do what it wants to do. And it may be really uncomfortable for the first couple hours of the day or the first half of the day, right? Like when we're tired, it's like, oh, I just really want a little more caffeine. But if you can push through, because you don't want to delay your clock, and so then you don't sleep the next night. And then, as you said, vicious cycle. It's so hard to get out of it. So can we just kind of step back a little bit and let the body do the healing that it naturally knows how to do?
Yeah. I would agree. And I definitely experience this personally. When I don't sleep well, the next day I get on that blood sugar roller coaster, and I can even feel my body saying, carbs, sugar, please. And I eat a kind of a lower carb. Yeah, I kind of eat a lower carb diet, and I don't eat sugar. So when my body is craving that, I know, okay, what did I do? I didn't sleep well is usually the thing. So like Lauren said, just be patient with yourself that day. A biohack I like is using creatine and some kind of NAD supplement. Those are really good for getting through the day when you are sleep deprived. Try and get some more cellular energy, I would say, rather than grabbing the quick fixes like the caffeine and the sugar.
Mm-hmm. And Renee, I noticed you said, I don't eat sugar. Bold statement. I love it. I'm a fan. I'm a firm believer in removing processed sugar. But can you tell us a little bit more about really what you mean with that statement? And for folks that are thinking, how is that even possible? Tell us more, Renee.
Yeah, I guess it is a bold statement. Sometimes I eat sugar. Maybe I should say that. On a daily basis, I don't. I do really well with more like a paleo Mediterranean mixed diet. So I really focus on protein, healthy fats, lots of vegetables. That's the staple, and that's what I feel really good with. Now, if I go out to dinner and there's maybe a really special dessert, or it's a birthday or something, I might indulge. Don't think that I never indulge. I might. But if I'm going to... excuse me, I'm going to take some maybe dihydroberberine, some things to offset the sugar. I'm also going to look at the timing. I don't eat sugar within 3 hours of bedtime, because I definitely see a disruption in my sleep. I'll typically wake up around 2, 3 a.m., which isn't worth it for me. So I avoid sugar actually for a lot of other reasons than what most people think. Most people say, I don't want to eat sugar because I don't want to gain weight. I don't want to eat sugar because I know it's damaging my brain. It's impacting my sleep. It's impacting my recovery. I don't want to do all those things. So if I'm going to indulge, I think and choose wisely about it.
Mm.
And then I do get a little bit of sugar from fruit. I know that's a debate. I don't really eat much fruit in the winter. I don't think humans were really designed to have fruit, because if you think about it, like, we don't have bananas growing in Las Vegas in January. I can tell you that. It's not a natural thing. But now that we can ship food anywhere in the world, we're eating out of season. And so I like to indulge in a little bit more fresh fruit in the summer, when it's more natural for humans to be eating that. And yes, fruit comes with sugar, but it also comes with fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, water even. So being mindful of that. And I'm not going to blend up like 5 different fruits into a smoothie and chug that down. That's not the thing. Eating whole fruits is the way to go.
Yes. And I'm curious, when you say you, on those occasions where you might indulge, you wouldn't do it 3 hours before sleep. Would that include fruits in the summer? Would you also not have those too close to sleep because it will have similar consequences than processed sugar? Or have you noticed a difference when you take fruits that come from the fruit, sugar that comes from the fruit?
Yeah, I personally do okay with a little bit of fruit later, maybe after dinner. I still don't ever eat within 2 hours of bedtime, though. 2 hours is like my hard rule. But if I am going to have a little bit of fruit, I'm going to have some like nuts or seeds with it, nut butter, some kind of little protein and fat, just to help balance that out. But again, everyone is different. I have really been tracking my glucose over the years and finding what works for me. Some people maybe can't do any fruit. Some people can maybe do more fruit. You have to figure out what works best for your body.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lauren, what has been your experience with sugar?
I definitely can't say that I'm a purist and don't eat any sugar. I would definitely be lying. I eat fruit sugars, as Renee talked about. And there definitely are like some plant sugars that are in things. Like every now and then, I'm not someone that likes to eat anything out of a wrapper, but I would be lying if I told you I never ate a protein bar ever. I like them as emergency food. And if I'm traveling, I think there are some more interesting and complex bars coming out that are great for metabolic health and for the microbiome, that have like these prebiotic fibers, resistant starch. So sometimes if I know I'm traveling and that's the only thing that I can get in, I'll eat one of those. And those do have some sugars in them. Yeah, like use some honey here and there. Certainly like things sneak in. Balsamic vinegar, I'm not 100%. But what I've learned, because I've worn a lot of CGMs, and this is what I do with a lot of my clients, is looking at the glucose metabolism, is if you can just make sure the timing is really specific. Like I know those windows of time where my body is going to use it, as long as it's not processed sugar, right? Like we're talking about sugar, natural sugars from the earth. I try to keep my fructose low, but there are sugars that will come in post-workout or even pre-workout or during the luteal phase of my cycle, when I know I need more carbohydrates. And if I don't have them, I see my sleep break down. So that rule, I have the same rule before bedtime as Renee does, but sometimes I will feel more hungry if I haven't gotten enough carbohydrate in the day, in the luteal phase. So I may actually kind of break that rule. And if I'm really hungry or feel like my blood sugar is dropping before bed, I'll have a little bit of fruit or a little honey or coconut butter. It kind of just depends. But I would say I've used the CGM, so I really understand what my glucose is doing and how I feel when those things are happening. So now I have more of like an intuitive idea of when I can, I guess I could say, like get away with it, or when it would be more optimal versus less optimal. And again, as Renee said, it's just such a personalized conversation. So it's really about knowing your body, collecting what we like to say is balancing your objective data. So from wearables, from lab tests, from something like a CGM, with your subjective data. So this is how you're feeling, like really getting clear and quiet with the body so you can get feedback, symptoms, feelings. Your body can tell you so much if you listen. That's kind of the problem. A lot of us don't give it the space to give us the feedback. But ideally, we like to balance both.
Yeah.
Renee, I could see you were about to say something about the signals that the body sends and that we often don't listen to.
Yeah, I was just kind of like, yes, Lauren, yes. I'm so glad you said that. I think so many people aren't in tune with their body. And I think it's partially that we're just living in a really busy world. Our cell phones are dinging us every 2 seconds and we're very distracted, right? A lot of people blame it on maybe ADD, ADHD. I think it's more just the environment that we live in. I think we're all just very distracted at times. And so it's like, how can we quiet the environment and really sit down, maybe in silence, just for 5 minutes a day, and like really check in with your body. Your body is speaking to you all the time. If you just give it the peace and quiet it wants, it will tell you a lot. And that's where we can really tap into our intuition. You know, people say, oh, I don't have intuition. Like, yes, we all have intuition. We're just not giving it the time and space it needs to express itself. And so whether you know, like I said, 5 minutes of quiet time per day, maybe you journal, match that with your quantitative data like a biohacker would, and see if you can match things up there. And then that way, maybe you can take a break from the data. Like Lauren talks about doing a training for the off season. You know, how can we use the data, learn as much as we can, and then take a break where we don't need the data because we're so in tune with our body. We know what our body needs. And this takes time. It definitely is a practice skill. But like now, like for me, like the last week of my cycle, I'm like, oh my God, sweet potatoes are just like the most magical thing ever for me that week. And it's because of what Lauren said, we need more carbs that time of our cycle. But it's amazing. My body's already telling me that's what you want. And so some women experience that as, oh, I want potato chips or chocolate. Similar craving, but maybe we can tune it back into saying, well, how can we get that same thing from healthier carbs? Anyways, that was a long answer to say, just quiet the mind, quiet the environment, tune into your body and see what it really, really needs.
And how do you bridge the gap between intentions and convenience? What I mean by that is I often get a pushback around, this sounds great in principle, Renee and Lauren, I love what you're saying, but I'm really busy and I have no time. And I eat what I can grab. And I put a few packaged snacks in my office and I have 10 minutes at lunch and I can't take a break. You know, this corporate narrative. How do you work with that?
I think it really just takes time to sit with the client and map out what makes sense for them. Like I would never, ever, ever hand over a nutrition plan that's cookie cutter, right? We have to sit down and go, what are your preferences? Where are the windows where you have the opportunity to eat? Okay, what are the pain points? What are the boundaries you're going to come up against? Like we're already kind of going through their day and imagining like where they're going to get stuck or fall off. And I think there's always a solution. It may not be the 100% most optimal solution, but you know, we do have to kind of compromise here and there to choose the best option in that moment. But it's simply that planning ahead that we've heard forever, like plan ahead and you'll succeed, right? But I think a lot of people need someone to sit down with them and do that planning because sometimes it takes a little more creativity and just forward thinking to really problem solve. I work with a lot of doctors and nurses that are just on these crazy long 12 to 24 hour shifts. And they're like, do not have time to eat. I'm like, we can make it happen. We really can make it happen. There's always something that we can do. So it's just about like working with the person and putting the puzzle pieces together. And I think it does take some teamwork, but it's doable.
I mean, that's a terrific example. Could you give us some sort of creative ideas on how you work, say, with a very time-poor doctor or a very time-poor surgeon or a very time-poor banker that's just work in the office, 14 hours of their waking hours?
Yeah, so those people are not going to sit down and have time to chew a salad. Like, think about how long it takes to chew your salad. So something like a protein powder, like a really high quality kind of bulked up protein powder. I love health code HLTH. This is one example. That really is a true meal replacement. So you get a high protein, you get your fiber, your fat, you get your healthy carbohydrates, and is quite filling. Renee and I are usually not going to jump to the drinkable nutrients because we think it's really important to chew so that you not only tell your brain that nutrition is coming in, but so you start releasing those digestive enzymes. Digestion starts in the mouth. So it feels silly, but I'll have my clients where if that is the best option to drink their nutrients, just make sure that they're kind of chewing, even if it's liquid and can just go down easily, chew it as much as possible. And then if we have a high quality source, there's really, I've never come up against anyone that's like, oh, I don't have time to drink some protein powder, at the very least, as one example. I could use like broths, vegetable broth or a bone broth, depending on what's happening in your gut, something like ketones. I mean, there's so many nuances. It depends on what's happening in the microbiome and the milieu and what they need and their preferences, but kind of just like go into the toolbox. Like, what's right for this person? Anything to add to that, Renee?
What about
Yeah, I would say fasting can also be really helpful for these people, again, depending on the schedule, because I mean, you can look at fasting in two ways. Like one, it is a stressor on the body. It's a hormetic stressor. So we don't want to necessarily do that if we're really having like a high strung day, we're trying to work out, we're doing all the things, we're sleep deprived. That's one end. But the other end of the spectrum is like, hey, if we're doing all the other things right and we truly have a crazy work day and we can't eat, we know we can't eat for 8 hours, learning how to fast can be really helpful. And that can, again, take time. And that's where this metabolic flexibility comes in. So as humans, we should be able to burn carbs or fat for fuel. Most of Americans are in a carb burning state all the time. That's why they need to eat every 2 to 3 hours, right? Keep a snack on hand because they're just burning through those carbs and the glucose is all over the place. But if we can teach our body how to actually tap into the fat reserves and burn that for fuel, we can go longer windows without eating. So for the busy professional, that can be really helpful. And another thing that's helpful, I think, Lauren, you mentioned, is ketones. Exogenous ketones. It's a great supplement to add in while you're in the process, while you have the training wheels on of fasting. Like, my body's not quite burning the fat for fuel that I need. Exogenous ketones kind of come in to save the day, gets you through a couple more hours of not maybe being or accessing food, helps with mental clarity, brain fog, energy. So fasting could be in the toolbox, but different for everyone.
And I would say the catch is it has to be intentional, because we have those people too. They're like, oh, I just didn't eat all day. I was so busy. But we have to come back to like, what is the story that the nervous system and your circadian clocks are telling you? Like, are you in a state of hypervigilance because your body thinks that it's in a famine? So ketones are great, but a lot of people overlook the simplicity of electrolytes, just getting in basic minerals, right? So maybe you're not actually taking in a lot of calories, but the ketones are a great example. Electrolytes, we could do aminos, essential amino acids, some creatine. Like, there's so many ways to make sure the body feels safe without bringing in calories that we have to digest and be in rest and digest to properly absorb. So we can still keep the body safe and hydrated and keep our brain functioning. And then intentionally fast if that's really what we're setting out to do. But don't do it by accident, hopefully.
And for folks that may not be familiar with amino acid and the importance of electrolytes, could you maybe tell us a little bit about that? I'm so glad you've brought up the subject. I use it before my training. I run with electrolytes, and then I use amino acid before my sleep as well. I'm a huge fan. So I just wonder if we could maybe tell a little bit more to our audience about what they are and the benefits.
I'll start with amino acids. So essential amino acids. So getting an EAA supplement is, I think, hands down one of my favorite supplements, because you're just getting pure amino acids, which are the building blocks for everything in your body. So people think, oh, I need more protein, more protein. Yes, we can get it from animal protein and eggs and things like that. Vegan protein sources, not as much, but getting the raw building blocks from this supplement is just incredible for, like you said, for sleep, for energy, pre-workout, post-workout. Yeah, I mean, I personally take like 5 grams at least once a day. I think everyone really should incorporate it, because it is hard to get enough protein, like I said, especially if you're doing a vegan diet, and it travels well. So you're not going to like throw a steak in your purse and be like, okay, if I need more protein, I'm going to pull that out.
I'm going to quote you on this, Renee. I would actually. I'm that close to doing it.
Challenge accepted,
there you go.
Renee.
I mean, the furthest I've taken this, Renee, is I once had a birthday cake made out of a steak. So that's how much I like my steaks.
Okay.
Good. I'm
That's
inspired.
impressive. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the dream, right? But for anyone that doesn't want to bring a steak in their purse, I like these little packets of essential amino acid powder. You can mix it in water. I actually just dump it right on my tongue and eat it that way. But yeah, I think everyone can do well with that. And circling back to like vegan, vegetarian, because it is harder to get enough protein, I think this supplement is great. And just to differentiate, EAAs, essential amino acids, is different than BCAAs, branched chain amino acids. I'm not a fan of branched chain amino acids. I think we're seeing more and more research coming out that it's really not the right ratio that we need, and they're not the right amino acids.
And Lauren, what's your take on that from a peak performance training perspective for folks out there that train hard?
Yeah, so there's always a question around like, should I eat before a workout? Should I eat after? What time should I eat? What should I eat? And I think it's really a personal answer. For me, I really don't like to eat before I work out, but I'm a cycling female, so I do want to be really mindful about protecting my hormones. So this is one of those things that kind of gives us the raw building blocks if you want to train fasted. I won't go too long prior to my workout, but if I'm working out in the morning, I really just don't prefer waking up and eating something first thing before I work out. So getting the amino acids, so you have the building blocks, which are really going to help you start to recover. They also can be really energizing and give you better performance during. So I would say, I would encourage anyone just to experiment. Like, how do you feel? There's not really a wrong time to take aminos. You can take them before, you can take them during, you can take them after, you can take them before sleep. I think you mentioned you take the aminos before sleep, or the creatine, maybe both.
Yes, that's the one.
So great for sleep. So if you are experiencing some blood sugar dysregulation throughout the night, like if you're one of those people that wakes up in the middle of the night, it's really hungry, or maybe your sleep is disrupted because you're getting that crash, aminos can really help set you up for a stable night of glucose. So I just think there's endless applications. And yes, for any of the women, I think particularly that are struggling to get enough protein, it does not equate to grams of protein on your food tracker, but it is, as Renee said, it's the raw building blocks, which are going to help preserve muscle mass, help you recover, energize you, make your brain feel a little more clear. And I think it's a pretty safe thing to experiment with. So like, just try and see if you feel better.
And Lauren, Renee, I would love for you to talk to us a little bit about a topic that might be controversial or might be hard to talk about, but is on a lot of people's mind, is stubborn weight. I'm sure you see that a lot in your practice. And I'm not necessarily talking about overweight or obese category. I'm talking about those folks out there that they just want to lose that 2, 3, 4 pounds. And they've been wanting to lose that 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds for the past 5 or 15 years. And it really is a bit of a recurring theme, and they never really got to that ideal shape or their dream weight. What have you seen? What are good hacks? Is there a mindset in there? It is more to do with metabolic health. Can you give us your view on that?
Ooh, can of worms.
Yeah.
There's
I know.
so
There's a couple
many
categories.
Things. Yeah. Do you want to kick off, Renee?
Yeah. Sure. I'll share the top two that come to my mind. Number one is toxins. We are exposed to so many toxins in our environment, in our homes, outside, air pollution, EMFs too, women, personal care products, beauty products. And our body is trying to protect itself. So it ends up storing a lot of these toxins in the fat cells. And I think that is a huge driver as to why people have this stubborn weight. Like you said, that last 2, 3 pounds, it just won't come off. I think a lot of times that's your body protecting itself. So, we need to look at maybe doing like infrared saunas, dry brushing, maybe an ozone sauna, something that's going to get a little bit deeper to help detox. And then overall, just minimizing our exposure, really looking at everything you are putting in and on your body, what you're exposed to, inhaling, touching. So toxins, I think that's a big can of worms. And then the other thing that comes to mind is more strength training, more weightlifting, especially for females. Still, when I go to the gym, I see so many women just like living on the treadmill and not in the weightlifting section. And I think that is a missing opportunity because, our muscle, I think Dr. Gabrielle Lyon calls it the muscle for longevity.
Yes,
and I think there's so much truth to that. Yeah. Muscle, it's also amazing for all of what Lauren was saying with glucose metabolism. So don't be afraid to lift weights and put on some muscle. It's going to help you, I think, live a longer, healthier life, more stable glucose, and then maybe easier weight loss. Because I'm telling you, chronic cardio at the gym is not the answer for the last couple of pounds. I think maybe, especially if you've been doing that a long time and you're not seeing results, I would say, hey, maybe we can cut back a little bit on the cardio, do more like walking, hiking, yoga, and then lift some heavy weights. Yeah, so toxins and weightlifting, I think, are two huge things there.
Ooh, that's a good.
I'm so glad
too.
that you
Yeah.
good too. And Lauren, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on that. But Renee, can I first ask you a couple of questions on those points? Because I'm really glad you've brought them up.
Sure.
I know you're quite the expert on the toxin because you also had to deal with that in your own health journey. How do you feel about binders and about doing cyclical interventions of taking binders or experiencing with clay or experiencing with different things that we can take to detoxify our body?
Yeah, I think binders are great, especially doing them around something like a sauna session. I think is a really good time to do that. I like to take my binders at least 2 hours away from other supplements. I think that's an important thing. But something that's inducing that detox, like a sauna session, and then taking the binder to try and capture things and get it out of your body. And that's really looking at getting it out through your colon, right? And we have different ways of detoxing through sweating through the skin, through the kidneys, through the liver, through the colon. So I'm a big fan of binders and cycling them. Like, it's not something I would take every day, but if you're flying, if you were exposed to anything extra that you're worried about, if you're consuming alcohol, additional things like that, those are great times to load up on the binders.
And what did you do personally to hack that mercury that you were talking about earlier on?
Yeah, there's a company called Quicksilver Scientific here in the States, and they specialize in especially mercury toxicity, but now they're also doing a lot of different heavy metal testing and detoxing. But I did their 6-month mercury detox protocol. And that came about because I did their TRI test, which is a really unique mercury test where they're looking at hair, blood, and urine. Most heavy metal testing is only looking at one. Blood doesn't tell you much because it's just like, okay, were you recently exposed to it? Is it an acute exposure? Is it in the hair? Okay, is it coming out of the hair or is it stored in the body and not coming out of the hair? There's just too many questions. So the TRI test, I think, is really helpful. And for me, it came back insane levels of mercury, which was somewhat shocking because I think a lot of people at first think, oh, you had probably silver dental fillings, mercury amalgam fillings. I never had any because fortunately, our dad is a biological dentist. Our mom is a holistic dental hygienist. They haven't used mercury in their practice since 1985, the year before I was born. So I never had silver fillings, thank goodness, but I had all the vaccines as a kid, which have mercury. I ate a lot of tuna fish. I have drank tap water. I have used makeup products. There's just so many other exposures of mercury. And I think it's often overlooked. Yeah.
So does that mean you're off the tuna now?
Yeah. Although I was just in Hawaii, and that's like my exception because the tuna is just like amazing and fresh. So I did have a little bit of tuna while I was there. But otherwise, I gave up tuna a long time ago. I think once I was diagnosed with that.
I'm sorry to hear about the diagnosis, but that's a tough one. I can't eat tuna in peace anymore. I'm looking at it and I love it. And I'm having too much. I think I'm giving myself mercury toxicity just from looking at the thing because I'm worried about it too much.
Yeah. Now you know. Yeah.
I know. And it's swordfish too. It doesn't even stop at tuna, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, seafood in general, it's unfortunately pretty toxic. Yeah. So, I mean, the smaller things, sardines and anchovies, not very popular, but those are probably the best options. And then wild caught salmon, if you can get that, I think it's a little bit cleaner.
We love our sardines in France. They're very popular.
Oh, nice.
Love them.
Well, I'm so glad that you've mentioned those. And last question to close that loop before we move on to Lauren's standpoint on that. You mentioned strength training, and I'm so glad that you did. I'm a big believer in it, and I currently train for a race, and I've made sure to include a lot of strength training into my program. And I have to be honest, it's one that I would naturally tend to overlook. So I had to really remind myself to do the training. I wonder whether you could give our listener a bit of a sort of a prescription. What's the minimum effective dose that you would want our listener to start with?
This is probably a better question for Lauren with her personal training background. But I think in general, like 3 times a week, some kind of full body strength training, if you can. Depending on your goals, you might want to break it down into different muscle groups. But for me, with where I am today, my health journey, I like to just do 3 sessions a week, full body. Squats, lunges, push-ups, bicep curls, you name it, with weights. And then if I can't get to the gym and I feel like I need an extra weight training session, I have something called the X3 bar, which is really easy. You just throw it in your closet. So for anyone that doesn't want an at-home gym, this is a great biohack because it only takes like 8 minutes. You do it maybe twice a week, and I have seen amazing results with muscle gains there.
And it's pretty convenient if you want to travel too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've thrown it in the trunk of my car before when I've driven places, and then that way I get to my Airbnb or my hotel and I have it there. Because hotel gyms are just the worst. I'm not going to use them.
They're not great.
They're not great. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Lauren. I would love to get your view on all of this and your biohacks around stubborn weight.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to jump in about the strength training. I don't know what the optimal prescription is, and it's going to change from person to person. But you just think about our ancestors that were constantly moving and really doing this functional exercise. Of course, they didn't have to show up to the gym because their environment was built for them to move and use their muscles every single day. So I'm probably a little more on the higher training side. Not that you have to do an intense workout every single day, but like you should use your body every single day in some way. And then I think it's reflecting back on that subjective feedback from your body. Are you recovered? Did you sleep well? Is your brain clear? And we can use wearables to kind of highlight the blind spots there and look at things like HRV and resting heart rate, like make sure we are getting true recovery. But I'm going to say, like, try to move your body and do some sort of strength training, even if it's just body weight or, doing some yoga poses or some mobility or cleaning your house, like moving some boxes could count. I think there's always an opportunity if you just think ancestrally about how much more we were moving and not sitting all day. But again, it's personal conversation and know your body. And because I come from a burnout past, so I know what too much is. But in my case, the burnout was chronic cardio. So I think it's a little bit harder to overdo the strength training because you're going to lose your strength potential if you're not recovered, right? Like it's not going to feel good to come back and break down your muscle tissue day after day. So we can split up the body parts and kind of change the training variables. But ideally, like I do something probably 6 days a week in terms of strength training. In terms,
okay.
Yeah, and I'm not always going to a traditional gym and doing a full length workout, but I'm doing something. Always doing something. In terms of weight loss, I would put toxicity at the very top of the list as well. I think Renee hit the nail on the head. We live in a very toxic world and we're exposed to so much more than we think that we are. And so that's usually an underlying root cause that we just want to clear for, especially in females that have tried everything. Looking at the toxicity, and part of that is looking at the mercury that you've been exposed to, whether through fillings or through your food consumption. And another potential source, not directly with toxicity, but something that my dad does is looking at sleep apnea. So airway disorders. Are you getting oxygen while you're sleeping? So when we should be resting and recovering, we need oxygen that's healing. It keeps us alive. And a lot of people have all of these sort of breakdowns or reasons why they're not getting oxygen to their body. So if you're not getting oxygen, you're most likely going to experience some weight loss resistance. So I would maybe put that number 2 under toxicity, make sure that you're getting proper oxygenation. And we can look at something like an Oura ring. I don't know that it's that accurate, but it's at least like a good indication if we need to look in that area. We could also maybe see HRV would be depressed or just not moving at all if you're not getting that oxygen. Beyond that, I think insulin resistance, and that's a more common one. We're starting to talk about meal timing and glucose, and more people are wearing CGMs. But I think by and large, most of us are opening our mouths like way too many times in a day. Right? We just like pass through the kitchen. It's like, I'll just have one more piece of chocolate, or I'll just have a couple nuts here. Or now I'll have my energy drink. And we really need to consolidate. So the same way that we need rest and recovery from our workouts, we need rest and recovery from our meals, from digesting and metabolizing. So that's a simple kind of tip or hack that everyone can start doing. Just try to consolidate your meals a little bit and have more time in between to allow that healing, allow your gut to reset, allow your digestion to get a little break. But beyond that, the metabolic stuff and insulin resistance, what else did we not talk about? Oh, you mentioned mindset and stress. So I think a lot of females do live in more of a hypervigilant fight or flight state for many reasons, which we could go into. But I think the nervous system is very telling. And if you're living in a fight or flight sympathetic state, you're hypervigilant, your body doesn't feel safe. If your body doesn't feel safe, it's kind of the same thing if you've been exposed to toxicity. Your body is going to survive in any way that it can. And in this case, it can create more fat cells to protect you. Or in the case of mindset, stress, nervous system, it's going to just hold on for dear life, right? It's not safe for our body to start burning fat and losing weight because it doesn't know what the threat is. And having more body weight is actually a survival mechanism, right? It doesn't know if you're not going to have food, if you're not going to have shelter, it doesn't know what the threat is. So I would probably put it's so hard to prioritize. And I'm glad you didn't ask. I don't think you asked. But I think nervous system is hugely, hugely important, particularly for women to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we often underestimate how much stress can have an impact on our weight, just generally speaking, and impacts our behaviors as well with food.
It does. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And again, we can say thank you. Our body's keeping us safe, but it's not keeping us optimal. And that's the frustration, right? I think we overlook the fact our body's doing everything it knows to do, given the circumstances, given the inputs, given the toxicity and the stress. So we really just have to keep zooming out and looking at those foundational pieces.
Well, since we've opened up that topic, I wonder if I could ask you one more question that is perhaps another slightly uncomfortable topic, but it is a growing concern. How do we feel about relationship to alcohol and that go to as a relaxation mode and sort of becoming a sleeping pill? And again, I just want to give a little caveat, not to sound like a complete hypocrite. I'm French. I grew up in the wine region, and I do very much enjoy my glass of wine at the weekend. So full disclaimer, I'm not on a completely no alcohol lifestyle, but I see a lot of folks out there really struggling with wine or booze, generally speaking, being their go-to relaxation mechanism at night, to the point where they actually don't realize exactly how much they're consuming and how often, and how much that can connect to that stubborn weight. It's like, I didn't eat that much tonight. But you had half a bottle of wine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, where do we start with this one? Yeah, I think it's a bio-individual decision on whether you are going to drink at all. But to start off with the metabolism, yes, when you're consuming alcohol, that is the number one priority of your body, is to metabolize that alcohol. So whatever you're eating is kind of just getting pushed aside and probably turning into body fat. So yeah, just metabolism alone, I think if you have that stubborn final 5 pounds and you haven't tried giving up alcohol, I would highly recommend you do that, because it's amazing. The inflammation that comes down, the belly fat that disappears, it's huge. But for me, I have cut back on alcohol because of what it does to my sleep. I not only feel it, I feel terrible the next day, even with 1 or 2 drinks, but I can see in my data, my resting heart rate comes up. My heart rate variability drops big time. My respiratory rate gets a little funky. I don't get enough deep sleep. I don't get enough REM sleep. So kind of like what I was saying with the sugar thing, why I don't consume sugar. I don't want to consume alcohol because of what it does to my sleep. And if I am going to have a drink, it's at least 3 hours before bed. I think the worst thing you can do is say, I'm going to have this glass of wine to wind down. It puts me to sleep. It's artificially tricking your brain to think, I'm going to sleep. It's really just sedating you. You're not actually going into deep sleep and then REM sleep. So I think, it's bad for metabolism. It's bad for sleep. It dries out your skin. We have seen studies where they look at just pictures of faces and who looks older, and it's always the people that consume alcohol. It dries out your skin. You get more wrinkles. So I just came back from this event called Biohack Your Beauty. And there were a lot of people talking about this topic. And if you want to like age more gracefully, I would really question the alcohol. And then also, if you are going to drink, no judgment, I still have some drinks sometimes, is what are you drinking? So for every type of alcohol, I think there's always a better option. Like wine, you're very lucky living where you do. The United States wine is terrible. We use genetically modified yeast. There's mold, mycotoxins, sugars off the charts. There's glyphosate. Even in our organic wine, there's glyphosate contamination, which causes leaky gut for sure, and then many other problems. So if you are going to drink wine, I would actually get it from Europe. Get it. We have a company called Dry Farm Wines that imports from Europe, which is amazing. They import all wine that is dry farmed. It's typically organic. It's low in sugar, lower in alcohol, no glyphosate, much better. So that's the wine category. And then if you were to drink liquor, tequila, vodka, gin, mezcal, the clear liquors tend to be better. I'll just leave it there. I'm like, if you are going to drink, there are better options.
Yeah, I agree with everything Renee says. And I definitely have changed my relationship to alcohol primarily because of sleep as well. And I see like this is especially an issue with women, because I find that the women that turn to alcohol are using it as a stress reliever. But if there is stress, that means your nervous system is probably dysregulated. You may have some inflammation. And so we're really pouring fuel on the fire. And I see this a lot in my perimenopausal, menopausal women, which is probably the worst time to increase your alcohol consumption, when we have a shift of the reproductive organs into more of the adrenals, and your liver really takes on an increased burden. This is not the time to add additional stressors to your body. So I would just be really mindful. And, everyone tolerates it differently. I know plenty of people that can, I want to say like air quotes, sleep through the night with it. I always question like how much better could your sleep be? And then I know for myself when I'm stressed, so if I'm drinking in my home environment, which means like in my normal work week, I have all my normal responsibilities, my tolerance is so low. But when I go on vacation, suddenly I can tolerate it so much better, because there's this reduction of stress, right? Like I'm probably spending more time in the sunshine. I'm enjoying community. There's more joy and laughter. So like the elimination of that stress allows me to tolerate a little bit better. So I would always just look at your stress load, because it's just another thing that's going to pile up. And something that we talk about a lot in our health coaching is like, how full is your bucket? Your bucket could be filling up and you don't know it. And all it takes is that one last piece that goes in the bucket and your bucket tips over. And that's when we have a health catastrophe, a health event, a crisis. And so you don't want alcohol to be that thing. So again, as Renee said, like if you're going to drink, try to choose cleaner things. If I go to a bar or restaurant and I don't see, or if I only see American wines on the menu, I'm like, nope, no, thank you. Absolutely not.
Nope.
And every time I've been to Europe, I tend to be able to drink a little bit better. And it's not just the vacation. It's, as Renee said, like you have higher standards over there, which is really, we're grateful that there is some good wine somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, they all come from France. It seems like France and Italy are always the top two that we get the wines from.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. They are good. Spanish and Italian wine can be delicious too. I like to believe that French is the best. Obviously, this is me being completely objective.
Yeah. Oh, I have some fond memories of sitting in Paris and drinking a bottle of wine with a charcuterie plate, and it just like amazing memories. So good.
Well, I'm glad we've done that for you. I would like to wrap up this conversation around the concept that I know is really close to both of your hearts, which is that of becoming our own health advocates. And I would really like for you to perhaps shed some light on what that means and how can we do that day to day.
Yeah, I think for both Renee and I, going through our own health struggles where we weren't getting answers from traditional medicine. And I actually had a recent event. I ended up in the hospital, and I'm happy to kind of go and explain that story, but I got in a tricky situation where I really felt like I had to fight for what I needed, what I know intuitively and from my own experience is best for my health. And I think in the health space, like no one is going to know your body the way that you know it. You are the expert in your own health. And we do need to consult other experts and experts in our fields and consult, our community and consult our health coaches. But at the end of the day, your body's going to know what's best for you. If we, like Renee said, can get quiet and get that feedback from our bodies. And so advocating is really important because you could very easily end up in a situation where someone else is pushing a solution on you. And if you don't know how to stand up for yourself, we don't know where that's going to lead. I mean, there's just so many bad places that this could go. And I almost went down the wrong direction being in my health event recently. And so I think it's really about building your team, about trusting your body, and not taking no for an answer. I think like when someone tells you this is just the way something's going to be, like I call BS on that big time. I think there's always an answer.
Yeah, I'm so glad you've said that. I really resonate with this message quite a lot. And Lauren, I'm wondering if you could go back in time and talk to the burnt out version of yourself that overtrained and didn't recover, what health advocacy would you give her?
One, I would say cardio is probably not the way to longevity and optimal health.
Excessive cardio, you mean?
Yeah, excessive cardio. I wish that I just had been more in touch with like ancestral practices. I didn't know the importance of circadian rhythm, of recovery, about time spent in nature, about time spent in community. I was kind of fed this narrative that more is better and that you would be rewarded for working harder. It's a little bit simplistic, but yeah, that's my answer.
I think it's a very universal message that can apply across many, many industries.
Yes. Yes.
What about you, Renee?
What I would tell my younger self before I burned out. I think that sometimes when you slow down, you can actually get more done. I used to think I don't have time for sleep. I definitely don't have time for a nap. Nap is for lazy people. I don't even have time to meditate because I don't have 30 minutes that I shouldn't be working. And that mindset and schedule is what led me to that ultimate burnout where I didn't have the option. I mean, like I said, I was sleeping 12, 13 hours a night just to function. And so I think if I had just slowed down a little bit, I would have been more productive, happier, healthier. I could have prevented that burnout. And now I see it as even on my busiest days, I find 30 minutes to go sit in the sunshine or go meditate, do something. And I'm telling you, when I come back from that 30-minute session, it's like a fresh new day. My brain is back on. I'm re-energized. I'm feeling really good. It is worth taking that 30-minute break or 15-minute break, whatever you can find in your schedule. It refuels you for the rest of the day. Otherwise, we've all experienced it where we try to push through and then we're dragging. And it's like, how productive are you really being when you're feeling sluggish and fighting through? So yeah, I think kind of like the quote, slow down to speed up. I wish I had heard that.
So do I.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, the three of us have experienced very similar work schedules.
Very similar. I am so grateful for this conversation. Can I just ask to direct our audience to your world? What is the best way for our listener to connect with you guys?
Oh, well, thank you so much for the opportunity. And so we have our podcast. It's called the Biohacker Babes, and I think it's spread across all the platforms. Our website is thebiohackerbabes.com. And on social media, we spend most of our time on Instagram, biohacker_babes. That's where you can find out what we're doing.
It has a beautiful pink image as well. You can't really miss it.
Yes. I hated pink for so long. Pink. And now it's just such a feel good color for me.
Well, it has been researched by science to actually be good for you. When you look at pink, you actually relax. It's a relaxing color.
I love
Right.
that.
I actually, have you heard about football teams or stadiums? Sometimes they'll paint the other team's locker room pink because it tends to be a little bit more relaxing.
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
So home team advantage. I don't know what color the home team is painting in their locker room. Maybe like red or something that fires you up, but they'll do the other one pink to kind of, make it a little more low key for them.
Fascinating.
Oh, I did not know this story. I like it.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Renee and Lauren. You both have amazing energy, and I'm very grateful for all your insights today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Such a
You're a
pleasure.
wonderful host.
Yes.
This was great.
So lovely to chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you for spending your time with me today and listening to this episode. Remember to subscribe so that you can receive weekly updates. And if today's message resonated with you, please remember to share it with a friend, a colleague, or a loved one who could really benefit from this episode.